My God, King, what was that? It was the O Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, CW, and today I have a question for you. What is the best rivalry in WWE history? Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Hit that bell, subscribe to the podcast. Let's get into it. What is your favorite / what is the best rivalry in WWE history? There's so many. It dates back so long. You can point to, ancient rivalries that spanned thousands of matches per Ric Flair's claim that he and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat had over 2,000 matches in their feud way back in the day. You can obviously point at the stunner-sized elephant in the room, Vince and Stone Cold, as the greatest rivalry. That's probably the greatest rivalry, or the greatest televised rivalry in professional wrestling history. I'm sure wrestling aficionados can point out rivalries that no one's ever heard of that have been on either, New Japan or indie wrestling, or, just like I said, ancient WWE rivalries that no one's ever seen, or they were seen on a tape or something like that. But I'm talking about, what's your favorite / best rivalry? I'll go first. So while I mentioned Stone Cold and Vince, I think that would be a cop-out to call that the best / my favorite. It was great, and it does rank at the top, but that's easy pickings. Everyone would say that. So let's go through some of the best, and then I'll tell you the one that I enjoyed the most. So I think one of the best that I've seen in a long time, when she was still in the company, is Sasha Banks and her buddy Bayley. They've had they've had fantastic matches over the years. They've tore the place down. Their match, I believe their match at TakeOver was the reason they got called up, or they were already going to be called up, and that was just like sealing the deal for them. They tore the house down. Bayley and Sasha had fantastic rivalries while the both of them were in the company together, and I think a lot of that came from them being actual friends, so they knew how to push each other's buttons and also push each other in the ring. They trusted each other wholeheartedly and completely, which always leads to fantastic matches. You got to trust your partner in the ring, and when you do, you're allowed to do more things. You're allowed to stretch your legs, stretch your wings, and fly, let's say. And Sasha and Bayley really pull that off. Another one, obvious. If you grew up in the Attitude Era, or if you watched any of those old pay-per-views, the Hardy Boys versus Edge and Christian versus the Dudleys. That sort of triple kiss of a rivalry produced some of the best ladder matches. They created the TLC match, which we haven't seen in a long time. You notice that? When's the last time you heard of a TLC match? Maybe there's been a couple since I only started watching wrestling again last year. But they, had some of the highest spots in WrestleMania, specifically WrestleMania 17, where Edge speared Hardy off the ladder. Like, Hardy was holding onto the belt. Edge dove off with his terrible spear and, rocked the crowd. Those three teams had some of the most fantastic matches and such great chemistry. And if you listen to Bubba Ray Dudley talk about how they put together the matches for WrestleMania 17, it sounds like he was like, we were all fighting for the best match. It turned into like screaming matches, like, no, you should take the big spot. I already took the big. That's when you know the match is going to be great. And every match they did was fantastic. They had a nice long run. I think it might have been too long, but every match they did was great. Right up next to Vince versus Stone Cold is quite possibly the longest, greatest rivalry in my recollection, which was Shawn Michaels versus Bret the Hitman Hart, because it had real world heat. You want to talk about guys who legitimately did not like each other for full lifetimes of people. People were born and turned into adults for as long as those two guys did not like each other. They only, I would say recently, maybe maybe 10 some odd years ago, reconciled on camera and are no longer, beefing because, again, they're both old. And this feud doesn't need to continue. But man, Shawn and Bret, HBK and the Heartbreak Kid, HBK and the Heartbreak Kid, those are the same people. HBK and the Hitman have had one of the most storied rivalries, with the Montreal Screwjob and just Bret leaving the company and just taking digs at each other in magazines and dirt sheets and online or what have you. I mean, it was real. It was on-screen heat and then real world heat. It was, I mean, if you are a youngster and you haven't seen the fallout from Shawn Michaels versus the Hitman in the Montreal Screwjob, go look that up. If you think you like the bloodline stuff, go look at that. I mean, that was reality television before reality television was a thing. Those two went at it for years, and obviously Vince was the one who orchestrated the whole deal. So yes, he put a hit out on the Hitman. Can you guys believe that? he put out a hit on the Hitman. How do you try to take out the Hitman like that? That's crazy. I never put it like that in my head, but man, he really did. He put out a contract on one of his own people before he left. Wild. Anyway, go look up that feud. Fantastic. But before I ramble on and on about feuds that I don't give a crap about, let me talk about the feud that I love the most. And you'll believe it if I say it, but it pales in comparison to the rest, but it was my favorite. Undertaker versus Kane. That's right. The Brothers of Destruction. You want to talk about a fantastic mythical storyline? Let me give you a reason why I find this feud to be the greatest WWE feud in history, of all of histories. I am a dork, all right? I do a 10-minute podcast about wrestling every day. I'm dorky. And I grew up loving superheroes. Love superheroes. Big DC fan, moderate Marvel fan. I love the tights and the flights and all that stuff. Undertaker was maybe as close to a superhero / villain that you could get in WWE. He was dressed like a comic book character. I mean, he had all the comic book accoutrement. He had powers and whatnot. And when Kane came on the scene, he was like my version of The Undertaker. Dad's first time, shout out Dad's first time, loved The Undertaker. And once Kane was introduced, I was like, that's my guy, with the red and the fire and the brimstone, and he sets the ring on fire and he's strong. And then they were like, and he's Undertaker's brother. And I'm like, oh my God, amazing. They had some of the most boring matches in history, and some good ones, but mostly boring ones. And they had, the Inferno match and casket matches, and, they tagged up together, and they, became Brothers of Destruction, and they just, throughout, 20, 30 years together, this storyline just kept going, and they always kept the kayfabe that they were brothers, and it was such a great through line. It was something that I almost wish they kept the storyline going through Undertaker losing his streak or so. I don't know. I wish he was part of it. I wish Kane was a part of that. Not just Brock Lesnar, but Kane. Should Kane have ended the streak? No. Maybe. I'm biased. I love the comic booky nature of their relationship, of their costumes, of their supernatural powers in this professional wrestling setting. It's my favorite pairing, my favorite storyline, my favorite feud of all time, hands down. What is your favorite / the best WWE rivalry in the history of histories? I want to know in the comments. Drop down there and let me know what you guys think. Thank you once again for listening to the O Wrestling Podcast. Make sure to hit the bell, subscribe, tell a friend, tell your mama, tell your grandmama. Today is my rest day, so I'm going to take it easy, but don't you ever forget.
I'm your friend, but if I ever see you in the ring, I can beat you. Don't you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah.